this documentary, Dog War, was quite the difficult watch. Um, I guess before anything, why was this something you wanted to tell right now with the political climate the way it is?
Can you be more specific with that question? Because like that'll matter
Um,
how I respond to it.
I guess with the way people are seeing, foreigners and the way they treat pets or animals in general.
Well, I'm not sure if you're referring to the whole kerfuffle about like Trump saying immigrants were coming in and eating our pets. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I started this film 7 years ago, so that wasn't in the political discourse or at all. So that didn't factor doesn't factor into it at all. Although it's, I like the fact that it sort of brought an opening into this issue. Like, well, uh, some people do eat pets. Some people do eat dogs and cats, and well, let's talk about it. So I'm interested in having those discussions about things that are also uncomfortable, and challenging some of our assumptions. um, so that to me was important. And so when we talk about dog war, the war is there's a lot of aspects of that war. There's the war of of just whether it's okay to eat dogs. There's the war between the West and the East, let's say, Western values versus some in this case Korea, and some practice that has been going on for hundreds of years. So that's an aspect of the war. But there's also an aspect of the war within Korea itself, within South Korea. Um, the fight is going on there. There would be no change if it were just coming from the outside, if it were just seen as a cultural imperialism. So I just find all those aspects and all those juxtapositions and contrasts really interesting. Um, I'm interested in asking the questions, and in challenge, like I said, challenging some of the assumptions that we have, and then letting people take it from there.
Definitely. I think the way you guys presented the information is very crucial. I think there is no racism involved. There is no prejudice involved. It's just fact, 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 which is important. Uh, how difficult is it to go into a topic that's so emotionally charged for the Western civilization and, just keep uh, presenting facts instead of hitting too much emotional aspects of it?
Well, you have to have the emotional aspect to it. I mean, that's paramount, is that to be able to draw people in, to I don't want to say play on heartstrings, but that like it's like we have to have the we have to care, we have to care. Um so I do want to, that was part of this. I mean, it was part of it for me. It's like I care. That's why I'm involved. That's why I was involved with it. And so think of myself as sort of like the proxy for the viewer. Um, what I'm experiencing, they can experience, and what I'm interested in, they're probably interested in as well. Um, so um, yeah, you also don't want to get so wrapped up in the emotional aspect and the passion that you lose sight of some important issues of fairness, of nuance, and so I hope we struck that balance in the film.
It definitely does have a balance. I thought the information you presented is incredible. I love the research aspect of it. Uh, how difficult, well, not difficult, how much research went into this in order to gain that type of balance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the research, what would the research be? It's mostly the research is what we're doing as we join this team doing their work. But yes, there's a lot of research to be done. Like, to what extent has this been a practice in South Korea? And even people in South Korea don't know the answer to that question. Some people think that it started in the Korean War because people didn't have food and they turned to dogs. Um, but there is, as we showed in the film, there's evidence of eating dogs as sort of like a as celebration for part you know, certain life events and that kind of thing, so that it was in some way part of the tradition. Does that mean that we have to continue the tradition? You know, a lot of things, as someone pointed out, a lawmaker in Korea pointed out, it's been a tradition for Korean men to hit their wives. Um, but is that okay? So he said no, it's not culture, it's a crime. And so, we have to, our values change through time. And as we sort of like open our eyes, and I like to think as we open our hearts as well, um, some of our traditions are going to have to fade away as we question some of the assumptions that we're doing as we open our eyes, as I said, as we open our hearts, that we have to we have to question those things and we have to shift. And luckily, that's happening in South Korea. Um, that there is a change, partly because of the combined efforts of people from outside of the country, from inside of the country, to make this shift, this real historical shift. And the dog meat industry in South Korea is supposed to stop in 2027. So
Oh,
that's the good news.
that is awesome. I guess the bigger question for this is what is slowing down the progress in evolving past this? Because, like you said, there's many people against it already in Korea as well. So why is it so slow to change?
Well, then now we're talking about not just tradition, and but I mean that in itself is it's really hard to change our habits. That's sort of across the board, and it's also money. This is an entrenched industry, billion-dollar industry practically. So, people don't want to give up their incomes.
Mhm.
And so there's going to be pushback. There's going to be a fight, and there is. That's what the dog war is. It's a fight. Um, so practically, what's happening is the South Korean government is coming in and saying, "We're going to help you, dog meat industry, dog meat farmers. We're going to help you switch to some other livelihood. We're going to give you subsidies for it." So I think that's the only way when it comes down to money, um, that people that their livelihoods and their income is not completely disrupted.
Definitely. And what kind of obstacles did you face in bringing in a camera into a lot of these situations? Because it seems that the people fighting this war are like very much in need of staying anonymous for the most part and being able to do their job without
Yeah.
barriers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as our protagonist John says, he says a few years ago, the people involved in the industry would have been proud to share what they're doing on camera, to show what they're doing on camera, because they didn't see it as bad. Now, with the sort of onslaught of camera phones and YouTube, they're seeing their industry portrayed in a very negative light. So they want to stop it. Like it's bad PR. The camera means bad PR right now, especially when the camera is being held by a foreigner. So they're reluctant to go on camera. That sometimes they'll get violent, as you saw in the film. So it was challenging. It was challenging because we needed to sort of like peek behind the curtain to see what's there to show the reality. But it was very hard because that curtain was strongly protected and kept closed.
It seems that you were able to get into to film a lot of what seemed to be volatile situations. Was there any point where you felt at risk or in danger at any point?
Yeah, I mean, they were coming. I was the camera person. I did camera as well as direct the film, and they wanted to come at the camera. That was the threat. The threat was the camera, um, not just the presence of other people of the opposing side. It's the camera. They don't want to be seen. They don't want it to be seen. So yeah, I mean, they came after me a few times, and I, I have to say that I felt in danger, and in some situations we were doing things that were illegal, and so there was a some concern there as well.
Um, what would you say to the viewers who will say that we're trying to impose a Western culture onto an Eastern culture or Eastern civilization that is ingrained, that has this in their culture, that has had tradition?
Well, that's a great question, and we bring it up in the film. Like, I want people to think about that question. And you're asking me what my opinion is, and I will say, like, what's important to me is to ask the question. And so, look, this is sort of like history unfolding. This is the history of the world of one civilization and different cultures mixing and influencing others, and um, uh, so it's not different than at any other time. Maybe just that things are sped up because of the internet. Um, but the dog war is not just between the West and the East. Like I said, like it is within the country itself, within that culture itself, there is the tension, there is the war, those who want to hold to the past, those who want um, to stop and to move forward. Uh, so I look at this as interesting myself. I think it's interesting. And there's one person in the film, the academic, the Dr. Dogmeat, who sees it as all Western imperialism. Um, and it's okay. He can see it that way. And in some ways, maybe it is. But also influence outside influences are always present. It's like inside, outside, that like we can't stop it. We can't stop that flow of information. Um, and so while we need to have respect for our traditions, we also have to understand, like the lawmaker and like the Korean lawmaker says, it's not culture, it's a crime. Just because we've been doing it for hundreds of years doesn't mean that it's morally defensible. So we have to look at that as well, instead of just through the lens of what you called cultural imperialism. I think a better way to look at it is cultural difference.
Definitely. Do you think people will draw any similarities to the meat industry as a whole?
Uh, yes, yes, and I hope so. Like that's another question that I want to bring up in the film. It's like, okay, we've looked at this particular industry, dog meat industry. But to what extent is this similar or different from the meat industry in general? Um, and while I do think it's different because human beings domesticated dogs to be our friend, to be our best friend, and so it's a breach of trust. Um, and dogs, want to be our friend. That's even as they're being killed for dog meat. They're they've been domesticated as pets. That's not true for livestock, for the domestication of other animals for livestock. It's not true. However, when you start looking at the humanity involved in this issue, or the lack of humanity involved in this process or in this industry of eating meat for our consumption, you can't not look at the suffering of other animals. So I do want people to ask those questions. Where they land, I don't know. Like, I personally eat meat. Um, when I first went to Korea, I stopped eating meat altogether. Now I do because I feel like I need the protein and I'm not getting it. I'm not doing a good job getting it. Um, but I want to bring those questions to the fore and have conversations about it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on this documentary. It's a hard watch, but it's definitely a topic that needs addressing, and thank you very much for your time and your very thoughtful opinions.
Thank you, Jesus. I agree with you that it's difficult to watch, but um, I think we need to. I think we're in a period where we want to be sort of like uh, whether it's escapism or like we don't want to, like nobody, we don't want to be traumatized. These buzzwords about like we need safe spaces, we need to be safe. We need to. I think we need to push against the boundaries, things that make us uncomfortable. That's the only way we're going to get to sort of, I think, break out and uh, uh, and really make the changes that we need to make.
Definitely. But once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much.